Good morning, family. You are tuned into the Dr. Christie K Morning Show, where we are excited to have you today. I am your host, Dr. Christie K, and we are on KGGR 1040 AM. Before we dive in, I want you to create a moment just for yourself. Settle in, open your journal, pour that favorite cup of comfort, whether it's coffee, tea, or water. We have ours in studio today. Because what you hear today may be the very spark you'll want to carry with you long after this show is over. So let's pause to honor those whom we've lost in our lives, especially this past week, as most of us know all too well the emotional journey those families have ahead. My meditation for this morning was for the caretakers who have the awesome responsibility to provide peace and comfort to their loved ones who are unable to fully care for themselves. The Dr. Christie K Morning Show is brought to you by Mansfield Funeral Home Cremations, where family is treated with dignity and every story is honored with care. If you or your loved ones are navigating loss or ready to put a plan in place for peace, call us at 817-453-3009. Again, that's 817-453-3009, because we are here to serve you with compassion. Today, we are joined by a man who has shaped history, led with courage, and stood resilient in the face of change. Ambassador Ronald Kirk. From his groundbreaking leadership as the mayor of Dallas to serving our nation on the world stage, Ambassador Kirk embodies what it means to lead with purpose. Let's go to God in prayer. Lord, we thank you for the gift of leadership, for voices that inspire us, and for examples that show us what it means to serve with integrity. You remind us in Proverbs 29:18 that where there is no vision, the people perish. Today, we ask you to expand our vision and give us clarity on how to lead, whether in our homes, our communities, or our careers. Bless Ambassador Kirk and his family, and be with him as he shares his wisdom, and bless every listener who is hungry for direction and resilience in this season. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Welcome to the show.
Look at you.
How are you feeling today?
I'm doing great, and I got to tell you, I'm so proud of you. The listeners, full disclosure, you all should know that Christy is my godmother. Our family, I worshiped with her mom and dad years ago when I first moved to Dallas at Mount Pisgah Missionary Baptist Church, and her grandfather and grandmother all took a little bit of pity and interest on this little nappy-headed Negro from Austin who had moved up here to practice law, but we've been friends. But I've got to tell you, I'm so proud of what you've done, what you've built, and what you're doing with this podcast. And I love the way you centered it first to encourage all of us. Just take a moment, be grateful for the life we have. In these turbulent times, it is so easy to wake up and immediately become absorbed in all the noise and all the distraction, division going on. And we can lose sight of the fact that part of God's gift to all of us is that free will that you decide how you want your day to go. So anyway, I love that. Something that I try to do every day, but I got to at least tell you how proud I am of you.
Thank you so much. That means so much. And I grew up watching you. My dad always positioned me so that no matter where you were, he would say, okay, let's go see your godfather. I want you to see him in action. And I don't know if you remember this. You had a speech at City Hall, and you turned to me before you went on and you said, Christy, do you want to introduce me? Do you remember that?
Mm-hmm.
And I said, sure. I got to the podium to introduce him before this press conference, and I started crying because I was a little girl and I was so nervous. And my dad said, dry your tears. Don't let this ever happen again. And that's literally what pushed me into motivational speaking and speaking life into people and helped me to learn it's okay to be nervous, but overcome it for that time right then. So thank you for even nudging me to do that.
Well, one reason that I did that.
Mm-hmm.
And any place that I spoke where there were young people, I would always encourage them to do that. Because one, I wanted to demystify the notion of what it meant to be a mayor or an elected official. Because on one hand, you get elected, and all of a sudden you are the honorable so-and-so. And all of us know a few of our friends who got elected to something. They go, girl, I've been to school, church with him, ain't nothing honorable. And my thing was, and I was very proud of the fact that I had an opportunity to serve the people of Dallas as their mayor. But I also wanted people to know the mayor is the same guy that you sang in the choir with at Mount Pisgah, or you took your kids to camp with in the same, Girl Scout camp, or the program we had at the Y, or the mayor who served Coca-Cola at your kids' elementary school's Halloween picnic. And yeah, we may have these titles, but no, that's not who we were, who I am. I was still a husband and a father, a lawyer, all those other elements I wanted to bring with me.
Absolutely. And many of our listeners may not think of themselves as leaders in the political sense, but they do lead in their families, their churches, and their communities. How would you define leadership for the everyday person?
Well, two things, and you hear it enough, you see it enough growing up, your grandparents can tell you, and you'll think you pay no attention. But it is true, all of us are a role model in some way. Everything we do is being observed by somebody, particularly us as parents. And I'm trying to remember which event it was you introduced me at, but I'll never forget, one of the things I loved doing was hosting young people. And so I had an open forum for middle school students. And we went through and we did the usual questions about what it means to be a mayor or not. And it's always when you think, oh, I'm on fire today, I'm going, let me take one more question. And I'll never forget, this girl stood up and she said, I love the fact the way you dote on your daughters. And Alex and Catherine were 6 and 3 when I was elected mayor. And she said, I'm curious, when they're old enough to maybe start dating, or maybe later ready to marry, what will you tell them about choosing a man? And I thought about it and I responded to her. I said, I don't think I'll tell them anything.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And I said, and the reason why is, I said, one, I hope that's a long way away. But what I shared with her was that I have to believe and have to hope that by the time my daughters are ready to start getting engaged with someone emotionally, they will have at least witnessed me for 15 years, 20 years of their life, how I respect and how I communicate with their mother.
Yes.
And it's like everything else we do in life, what we learned from the beginning in church. At the end of the day, you're gonna pay more attention to the sermons that we see than that someone preaches.
That is
and so whether it's as a parent, whether it's at work, whether it's at a business leader, how you conduct yourself is the most powerful lesson you can give in leadership. And so when we were taught by our parents, by our teachers, look, everybody's a role model, because you start in school and you have the choice. So you're going to be the kid who does well, and you're the kid who cuts up. Well, everybody's paying attention to you.
That's right.
Good or bad. And to some degree, I rebelled on that because kids made fun of me. You talk right. You sound this. But my mother was a school teacher, so we didn't have a choice. But people are paying attention to that, one way or the other. And so even if you say, I'm not a role model, yeah, you are. Because you're either that person that, sadly, we all got somebody to say, don't roll up in here like your brother, like your cousins, like so-and-so.
Right.
I don't care what they do.
Yes.
You sit up straight, you do your homework, you come to work on time. And as I think about my own career, I'm now 71 years old. So I define my generation, and to a lesser degree your parents, but certainly your grandparents. We're the first generation beneficiaries of all the dreams of our elders who fought for us to have the right to be able to go to a good school or work in a career or own a business. And as we made that journey, all of us were confronted with stepping into a field where there weren't maybe a lot of people who looked like us.
Yes.
And interestingly enough, Christie, every job I got where I was the first one to do it, I would take a piece of paper. I'm old enough, I still have yellow pen. But I would literally take a piece of paper and I'd draw a line down the middle of it. Mm-hmm. And then I would think, okay, who do I know that does the job, and who have I observed that does the job that I'm about to enter? Mm-hmm. And on one side of it, who were the people that I thought did that job to a degree that I admired them? And who were the people that I thought, they're awful? And then I would go down, what is it that I admire about them? Well, and it's going to sound non-revolutionary to some of your listeners, but the best leaders I find, one, they were really smart. Mm-hmm. And you have to know what you're doing. You have to invest in yourself. But they respected the people that they work with. They inspired the people they work with. They gave them the opportunity to learn. They treated everybody with respect, whether they were the lawyer or city council person or the administrative staff or the people who, cleaned up the building or the restaurant after you left, or the people and the people on the other side were the, I know everything, I got this, y'all just here to, sweep up after the parade, or they walked in the room to see Christie and they disrespected your administrative staff because I don't have to waste time. And the one thing I just resolved, don't be the people on the right-hand side of your column. And that can apply to us as a parent. A lot of us didn't have the benefit to grow up in a loving family like you did. Yeah. You had both parents who went to college, both grandparents. You grew up in a church. You had role models everywhere. But you and I both know that life isn't like that for a lot of us, and particularly in our community. But you can also resolve that I'm not going to put my kids through that. Right. And I don't know if you remember, you were too young. I spent 10 years in the Big Brother program.
I remember.
And it helped me, I think, one, it forced me to be a better listener. And that helped me to realize you have to meet children where they were. And the one thing I told both my little brothers was that, look, I wish I could tell you what your path was going to be, but the one thing I will do now, and I was pretty cruel, I was like, one, the pain of growing up without a father. You ain't going to be a daddy.
That's right.
When you graduate. So I made sure they were being careful. But the one thing that I challenged them was, that pain of growing up without a father, just resolve to be responsible in your life decisions. So
anyway, I love that.
I kind of took that.
I know that's great. Those are you provided so many nuggets to myself and those who are listening. And he's here in studio. If you want to talk with him, our number here is 972-988-1040. Again, that's 972-988-1040. Leadership isn't easy, right? And anyone that says that it is, they're not telling the truth, or they're possibly not leading effectively, because effective leadership takes work. It takes resilience. In your journey, how did you discover your purpose, and what has kept you grounded outside of your family, your children, and Matrice? How have you kept yourself grounded through the seasons and pressures and the changes?
Well, that's a lot of questions. Yeah. And one, I'll go back to a little bit of what I said. I mean, I'm proud of my journey, but I'm very much a product of the environment that I grew up in. I mean, I'm young enough to have experienced these incredible opportunities you mentioned, to be a lawyer, to be in public service, both state, locally, and federally. But I'm old enough to remember my parents couldn't vote when I was born. My parents, I grew up in Austin. For those of you who don't know, I grew up in the shadows, literally, of the state Capitol, 1011 Olive Street, which is literally 2 blocks off of I-35. Now everybody goes to Austin and stands in line at Franklin's Barbecue, and I laugh because we grew up 3 blocks from that. We're like, you couldn't pay white people to come stand out at 6 o'clock in the morning. But that informed me, shaped me to want to be an agent for change. And even as a very young kid, I knew who Thurgood Marshall was. And because Austin was both home to the University of Texas and our state capital, maybe earlier than most, I had a real sense of where the most efficient means for change was. And at least when we were growing up, more change was happening for people of color because of courageous lawyers like Thurgood Marshall and principal judges than it was through the political process. That was more subject to being bent by popular will, whether it was negative or not. So that's what inspired me to always want to be involved. But if you watched your parents, fight against the poll tax, fight against, discrimination in the workplace, education, you just, at least for me, the idea of not voting, not being involved in the civic political life of our communities is just not in my DNA. So all of that sort of gave me this environment where I wanted to be a lawyer, but I was also going to be involved in the political process. And then it just turned, as I moved throughout my career and moved around, I had these opportunities to serve.
Okay. Now, the question that people have asked me throughout the week to ask you, how was your time under former President Obama's administration? How was that?
Well, it was challenging, it was rewarding, but it was also inspiring. One, I had met him when I ran for the U.S. Senate after I stepped down as mayor in 2002, and we just clicked, but not so much around ambition. Our initial engagement was around the fact that we both were fathers of very young girls when we entered political service, but that we were also scared of our wives. that we were married to these powerhouse, Ivy League educated women, as I like to say, who thought they were getting an income producing spouse and not, some Negro who's going to run for office and be broke all the time. But one, to watch his career, be involved, and understand the significance of that opportunity was just something I could not pass. And one thing that we both shared, and it was something I said when I ran for mayor, because initially when I ran, there were a lot of, I love our people, but, there was many black folk who could, you cannot imagine the cussing and the ridicule I got when I announced I was running for mayor, because I wasn't from Dallas. I was a lawyer. I was in a downtown firm. I had people, you dressed like so-and-so, you talk like this, you ain't, they were, I don't know, they were ready to revoke my black card. They just challenged whether I had one. But the closer we got to the reality that I was going to be mayor, the more I could feel that fever pitch of excitement about Dallas is about to elect a black mayor. And we saw that with President Obama. But the one thing I challenged our community, and particularly every time I spoke to the church, was don't challenge me to make history, challenge me to make a difference. So one, and my point was, look, it's not lost on me the historical significance of what I did, what President Obama did, but we both inherently knew if we don't produce, ain't nobody else, we'll be the first to go. That Negro didn't do nothing. We ain't no better than we were. So one, just that, but his composure, his elegance, his grace, his intellect feeds. And we're seeing that contrast now so much with there. And I tell people, Obama wasn't responsible for all that, and neither is the current occupant of the White House. But the one thing you go back to is leadership matters.
Yes.
You can't come in your office and scream at people and cuss everybody out when something goes wrong, and then hand them your code of ethics and say, oh, we respect everybody, we treat all our customers. Well, working for someone who just has a natural grace and humility and intellect was an incredible experience. And then secondly, because I was gifted with the portfolio that I was, which was formally the title as the United States Trade Representative. So I was responsible for all of our international economic relationships, and the reason I have ambassadors that it goes with that office. And that is a second gift, because notwithstanding how divisive trade may be in this country, when you are privileged to travel the world and represent this country and step off that airplane and get in the car with the flags on it, you are gifted with the reality of how the world sees us versus how we see ourselves. And it's like everything. Here we are caught up, we're so divided. We're Democrat, we're conservative. We're black and white. And particularly when you're going to countries that are still trying to find their path to economic freedom. When you're in Africa, when you're in India, when you're in most of the developed world, you get off that plane, they're like, you're from America. And it's funny. They only want to talk about three things. You won't believe the number of people that ask me, is it true that y'all have buses to pick up your kids and take them to school?
Oh, wow.
And it's true y'all have free elections and you decide what you want. They don't want to hear about all of this other stuff. And if you look at our country, one of the realities, whether it's the spelling bee or you go to high school in America now, the valedictorian's always some name we can't produce. Immigrants new to this country radically embrace the opportunity to put their kids in school and give them an education.
Wow.
And they don't accept excuses. They don't want to hear about it's in the wrong neighborhood, the wrong distance. They appreciate the reality of what we have come to take for granted. Most countries don't have the opportunity to educate their own kids. And that education is still one of the most certain paths to changing our lives' futures, anything. So working for the president was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. I love being mayor because I was in charge, but to work for the president, and then just on a personal note, because my office is a component of the White House, I had the opportunity I was in the White House every day for work, but I had the opportunity to take people to lunch. And one of my good friends, Don Evans, who was Commerce Secretary under President Bush. But Don Evans and Henry Cisneros, who was Commerce Secretary under President Clinton, called me every day the first 2 weeks after President Obama nominated me, just giving me advice. And the one thing they both said, take everybody you know that comes to visit to lunch at the White House. Because they said after a while, it's going to be where you work, you're sick of it. But for me, anytime, if you came, my one requirement, particularly for my black friends, if their parents were alive, you cannot come unless you bring your parents.
Oh, that's awesome.
And to take our generation's parents to lunch, Christie, the minute I got them through security, before they walked in the building, they're out in the parking lot crying.
Aww.
Because, they were walking into a building, a lot of them couldn't visit, and the power of that moment. But it humbled me and reminded me how blessed I was that they did what they did so that I could walk through those doors, so that President Obama could be where he was. And to me, that made up for all of the political crap that we got, which we got a lot. But again, I choose to focus on the blessings, and not the stumbles. Because at the end of the day, and I wish I had your eloquence, there's a prayer that, if you ask God for strength, He don't just wake up and give you muscles.
Yes.
He gives you challenges to make you exercise.
Preach.
You ask God for patience, He gonna put a little stuff in your
now.
path so that you learn how to maybe hold your tongue. You want peace in your marriage.
Yes.
You want, love, respect from your kids. He gives you those challenges so that you exercise those muscles. And the more we remember that, I watched Stephen Colbert said something. He says, I thank God for all of my failures and for all of my journeys. Because without those, I wouldn't have had the strength and learned those lessons, how to overcome those to become the people that we are.
That's right. Family, wow, that was excellent. Family, Ambassador Kirk has reminded us today that leadership is not about titles. It's about service, resilience, and staying anchored in purpose no matter the season. Isaiah 40:21 says, He gives strength to the weary and increases the power of the weak. Let me ask you this. Where in your life are you weary now? And what would it look like to let God renew your strength? Because even in Jeremiah 17:7-8, it tells us that, but blessed is the one who trusts in the Lord, whose confidence is in Him. They will be like a tree planted by the water that sends out its roots by the stream. Are your roots anchored deep enough in your purpose to withstand the storms? Or are you drifting with every wave of change? This week, I want you to write in your journals and reflect, what is my purpose? Am I leading with it in my home, in my relationships, in my work? When change comes, and it will, how will you choose to respond? By breaking or by bouncing back stronger? Family, remember this. Resilience is built one decision at a time. Ambassador Kirk just said that. And your greatest leap forward may come right after your hardest setback. Stay anchored, stay grounded, and stay pressing. Ambassador Kirk, could you close talking to people about how they can renew their strength this morning?
Well, again, Christie, thank you. And to those of you listening, thank you. I know we've thrown a lot at you. But the one thing I want you to hold on to is, for those of us who have faith, and maybe even if you're not, is that particularly in times like these, when it can just seems like there's so much noise and so many problems and they're insurmountable. But always remember, great things have always happened just because somebody had the courage to stand up and say no.
Amen.
And even if you didn't, my generation, was shaped by photos. The photo of Emmett Smith, Till in Jet magazine, his mother having the courage that I want people to see this. Or the genius of John Lewis and Dr. King to have the march televised and America seeing that. But it was just the strength of them to say, I'm going to do it. And you did a Bible verse, and God forbid me for all of you preachers out there, but like a lot of us in the South, I grew up in a family church.
You grew up in a family church?
Every Sunday we had to repeat John 3:16 over and over. Everybody black knows John. God so loved the world.
Join us, family. We're about to sign off.
All right.
We are going to continue the show on Facebook Live.
All right. But that thing I want to do is, the older we got, the more I came to realize. When somebody asked us one time what that meant to us, and one of my cousins said, John, God so loved the world, he didn't send a committee. And as I grew older, we would laugh, and then he realized, no, he doesn't. Change is made by one person. When there's Rosa Parks or Dr. King, and when you ask, that can be you. And my father used to have a wonderful saying, ain't nobody asking you to move a mountain, but you could get your shovel.
Right.
And so don't worry about the enormity. Just do what you can do. And just resolve to do that, whether it's for you, for your family, or maybe speak up at work, and you just be stunned with your courage, with your light. We all grew up singing that song, This Little Light of Mine, and sometimes it just takes that one candle in the darkness to be the spark. So we all have that within us. Don't be afraid of it, and just use your voice.
I love that. And next week, we'll be joined by phenomenal woman of God, Kimberly Y. Evans. She's a powerhouse in law, business strategy, and financial empowerment. Together, we'll unpack the truth that making money is not the same as building wealth. This is a conversation filled with wisdom and practical steps to help you turn income into legacy. You don't want to miss it. Thank you so much for joining me. This has been amazing.
Family, thank you for tuning in to the Dr. Christie K Morning Show. I pray today's conversation blessed you and gave you something powerful to write in your journal. If it spoke to you, don't keep it to yourself. Go ahead and like this video, share it with someone who needs encouragement, and subscribe so you never miss another episode. And remember, at Mansfield Funeral Home and Cremations, we are here to serve you and your family with excellence and compassion. Call us anytime at 817-453-3009. Again, that's 817-453-3009 for pre-planning or support during a loss. Until next time, keep sipping on your favorite beverage, keep writing in that journal, and remember, leave well so you can leave well. God bless you.